We have joining us this afternoon the folks from what I have always called the History Place, but it's also called the History Museum. I frankly prefer the term History Place. I'll tell that to the assembled guests here this afternoon. We have with us Walter Steele. He is sort of the president of the Friends of the Museum. Am I correct on that, Walter?
It's our board
Let
of
me
trustees.
get you a little closer to that.
It's our board of trustees.
Board of Trustees. Yeah. Okay, to the History Museum or the History Place?
We refer to it as the Carteret County Historical Society.
Okay.
And then we include the fact that we have a museum and a research library.
All right. And we have also Gracie Bender, who is ostensibly the curator, right? Am I right?
No. I'm the director.
Director. Okay.
Which encompasses every position there, really, right?
All right. Then let's talk about the History Museum, Walter. What is the purpose of it? The whole organization. Let me get you to sort of give some background.
Sure. The charter or purpose of our organization is to maintain the history of the Carteret County archives, as well as memories that some of our members and volunteers can share with others through the research library, and to constantly be looking for those stories that might slip away so that we can capture them both in artifacts as well as media through recording. It's an ongoing effort, but the idea is to preserve the memory of Carteret County, all 100 miles or so, whatever you want to define the boundaries of that. And we are also considering the fact that if you look at the people who came in the past and the history that they experienced, there are great things that people have made in the past. So people that make great things make history, is our theory.
Well, a case in point, Farley Dickinson is from Carteret County. Of course, famed university.
Yeah, right.
So we were talking about that. Let's talk here for a moment, and then we're going to get in Gracie Bender's purpose and the whole purpose of the program related to the history, but background on the archives that you have there. Talk to us a little something about this and how much access does the public have?
That's a great question. We are constantly trying to improve that through a physical inventory of what we have on file. We use a program that's called Past Perfect, which is a common museum artifact software. They have an online version that we're working to get up to. And that access does allow for public access. However, we're not quite there yet. Now, the public access that people would get is they would come in and they would sit in our research library, assisted with someone that would either provide them with material and give them the time to peruse it. But it's pretty accessible. But I have to say that when you come into our library, you probably ought to allocate a little bit more time than you thought, because Dee Lewis and Bob Guthrie and Juanita, they all have the whole group has a camaraderie that it's hard to describe in detail.
Right.
But you're likely to find whatever you need, or they'll point you in the right direction.
Not only that, you may end up going down a variety of very interesting and enjoyable rabbit holes that eventually will come back to where you initially started. But
And we have photographs and the histories like Schumacher and
Jerry Shoemaker. Yep.
And then Clifton Guthrie.
Right.
And,
all of whom I know
Bob
and knew.
Simpson. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you know and you've shared with me, I really appreciate.
Well, and of course, there's some fascinating background on that. I've got to be careful. I might age myself. I'm really only just fresh out of college. But anyhow, we're talking with Walter Steele. And again, Walter, your capacity, I want to go back to the society. What is your job now?
I'm the president of the board of trustees
of the
Carteret County Historical Society.
Okay. Now, it's interesting. You've got Fort Macon, which has historical documents. You have Beaufort, which of course has the Beaufort Historical Association. Newport has an active historical group as well. do you find you're communicating with those various groups? Is there a sort of a collegial share of information?
To a degree, I think yes. I think it can be better. If you recall, you and I talked about the idea of some sort of a consortium, and I think that would be great. My philosophy has been to sort of plant the seed for the topics like that to grow so that it's naturally. There's always a little bit of provincial perspective, but we clearly believe that we need to represent and do the best of our ability the whole county.
Okay, and for those who are not aware of the location, and a lot of people are not, there's a beautiful clock tower for people to focus on. Give the location if you would, Walter.
1008 or 1008 Arundel in Morehead City. And it's near Talking Gibbs or the train depot.
Basically, it's the last stoplight in the 4 series of stoplights, or the first stoplight. If you're coming into Morehead City in the first series of 4 stoplights, it's the first one, or it's the last one if you're leaving Morehead on the right.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and across the street from
we've done a lot of work. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's across the street from the train depot. Yeah,
right. And we've done a lot of work that we invite everyone to come in and take a look. There's a lot.
Okay, and I just want to commend on this with you. You did a series on, military history of Carteret County, but particularly focused on World War II, and you had a variety of the local residents who served in World War II, as a matter of fact. And then you had some displays. You actually had an area, and this is where we're going to get into our conversation with Gracie Bender here in a moment, director. You had activities for children to engage in. A tunnel, as I recall.
We do. The Warriors exhibit still has the tunnels.
Okay, it's the Warriors exhibit. Okay.
But don't tell your parents.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now we're going to shift gears to Gracie Bender. She is the director of the History Museum. I like to call it the History Place because it's more than a museum. It's about people. And I'm pretty important. I find that very important. Gracie, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let me get you a little closer to the microphone as well. Little background on Gracie Bender. What's your background that you got into this area of being a director of the History Museum?
Well, when I first went away to college, I found that the one thing.
And where did you go to college?
Appalachian State University.
And for those who are not aware of this, we talked prior to the conversation starting. She's from California. How in the world did you find Appalachian State?
That's a good one. I wanted to be in North Carolina since I was a young girl.
Why?
And so I don't have an answer to that yet.
I think
keep waiting.
That's legitimate. I like that.
To find that answer, maybe written in the sky.
Okay.
I don't know. But I love being here, and I've always loved the state, and I love the oceans, but I like the mountains of North Carolina as well.
And you're from Northern California, so you've got mountains and lots of trees.
But the water is not as accessible.
It's cold too.
Yeah,
very cold.
As the Atlantic is. I just love the mighty Atlantic Ocean. So, so moving here, and when I was in school, I found out that I really didn't like very much except people's stories. Yeah. So it led me to finally. I started in business, and then I moved over and changed my degree to history because I like people's stories.
Wonderful.
I want to know what your why is, why you do what you do, and. So that's how, and then moving here, I had actually, right now, currently, I'm the president of the Pine Knoll Shores Women's Club.
Okay.
And in that position last year, I was the vice president, and I had to find speakers. So I found speakers by calling Walter to come and talk to our ladies about genealogy.
Wonderful.
And in that course of that conversation, Walter and I connected, and I was like, okay, well, I could come back to work. I could, and I just love history, and keeping track of those stories, I feel like, is a very important thing that we can do to pass along.
Walter, that aspect of keeping track of stories, and we'll talk about this in relationship very quickly before we go to a break, the issue of communities. This, of course, is the History Museum for Carteret County. But as I mentioned earlier, you've got Fort Macon, you've got Beaufort, you've got Newport. Of course, Newport was a key player in the Civil War, as of course was Fort Macon. And then Beaufort, my goodness, arguably the second oldest, there's a contention there, third oldest town or municipality in the state of North Carolina. Long history, municipal growth, and of course Queen Anne's Revenge and Blackbeard and what have you. But I would ask to you to this point, do you see the value of municipal type museums or history places such as the history place in Morehead City?
Absolutely, although I think your mention of the term municipal gets into how much should we rely upon the government to be involved in the management of museums.
Okay, no, wait. When I say municipal, I'm talking geographical.
Understood.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a good point. Should it be government oriented or should it be volunteer? I say it's volunteer. Should it be grassroots oriented?
Yeah.
Grassroots oriented.
Yeah. I think I would lean towards the nonprofit, although the government has its place in helping us be a better society.
Facilitate.
There you go. Yeah, and they do actually. Both the county and the city of Morehead do support us. We get a lot of support, and sometimes it just shows up. Other times it's requested and granted and so forth. But I think that the aspect of our work within the county, I've learned so much. We just put up a new map that we had commissioned. It's huge, and it shows the entire county,
right,
including the water. And the kids that came for the
We're going to talk about that. Yeah,
they couldn't help but touch the map.
Yeah,
and that's another thing we're doing is a map project.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I wanted you sort of get back to go from the macro to the micro. We're going to go to the micro here in a moment with Gracie Bender on the events and activities at the History Museum. But I wanted to just look at the, if you will, philosophical or broader perspective of, I call them municipal, local, for whatever description, county, municipal, regional museums. These are the sort of things that I think that's pivotal in this conversation.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've tried to promote, and it's getting some legs now, is the idea of what I call E cubed or E3, and that is engage, entertain, and educate.
Okay.
So the idea with that is it's quick, easy to remember, E3, and what you have is there may be tourists that come into place and you engage with them, and they want to be entertained.
Right.
They may have no interest in being educated. However, other people, they want to jump right to education, so we need to be ready to engage and educate and entertain each people.
A moment ago, Walter made mention of the fact of the 3 E's. Mm-hmm. Engage, entertain, and educate. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to talk to you about the concept of education, and there's a program that you have just initiated, Gracie, and I say you, the History Museum, I don't know who was behind it, but I'm going to assume you were, that engages fourth graders in the county. So let me get you to sort of explain the background on that.
Well, we are finishing up History Exploration Days, and back in September of last year...
History Exploration Days. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And back in September, we came up with the idea, starting from my desire to know where you live. Uh-huh. Here's a map. Where do you live? What's in this Carteret County community that we live in? And so from that, Michelle Powers, who is also one of our board members, she helped me write a grant to Carteret Community Foundation, and we came up with the whole theme of History Exploration Days to educate the fourth graders about the county that they live in. We followed the North Carolina course of study that in fourth grade, the course of study teaches them about the state. So we thought, what better way than to segue about Carteret County? That's what the History Museum of Carteret County is about. It's about the county. And so we came up with 4 different stations, and these stations, the students would move from station to station throughout the day. So they would each experience each station. And we got the county schools, they knew about it back in October, and they got it approved. And all of the county schools have taken advantage of it.
All fourth
graders from the county schools. We've had more than 650 fourth graders come through our doors since March the 19th. That was the first day. So, and one of the bigger things we did was get that map that Walter referred to made. It's beautiful. It was done by Keith Parsons, PC Maps, and it was commissioned by us. And it has beautiful resin that shows all of the water that Carteret County is surrounded by. It names all the sounds. It names all the rivers and the lakes. And of course, you see a lot of the mighty Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
So, but we had that put up because when the students first come in, we talk to them about when Carteret County was founded, how long it is from Cedar Point to Cedar Island, why are there big white open spaces, you know, and the forests and so forth. There's all kinds of things that are all about Carteret County. So it centers them on Carteret County. And then from there, they go into different stations that talks about. Do you want me to tell you the 4 stations?
Sure,
okay.
yes.
So there's 4 stations, and the first one I'll start with is we call it Riding the Rails. And so it's about the railroad and the industry of the railroad in Carteret County. And its rise, its fall, where it is now, and the things that students might find interesting about it, like, hey, what did they bring into the county, you know, many years ago? What did they ship out? We even have, you know, stories that people would come on a passenger train back in the day and spend their summers here in Carteret County. So the next one is the Big Rock Station. And of course, Big Rock Foundation has just given back so much to this community. So not only do we talk about the natural resources, the fishing, what kind of fish you can get, but the whole tournament itself, that it raises money. But one of the number one things that we really hone in on is being philanthropic and being civic minded, and at getting the students, 4th graders, to say, Big Rock, what they do is they give back millions of dollars into this community from a fishing tournament, quote unquote. And what would you give back to? Who, if you were in charge of that foundation, what would you give to? Who would you give to? And it just blesses our hearts so much, because some of them will talk about, you know, animals. They'll talk about building a better playground. But then they'll also talk about, hey, could we give that money to people that need it, the homeless and so forth. And so just getting them to think about that, I just think Big Rock has really done a great service to our community. The third one that we go into is in our library, the research and genealogy. So we talk about famous people that have come through our county, that are from our county, some not here with us anymore, but some still are. And they get them to discuss those people and why they were important to the building of Carteret County, you know. And then also they do a whole section on genealogy where we can hand out a family tree, get you talking about, you know, your family. And the last one is from a book from our curator, volunteer, Barbara McCreary. She wrote a book called Ebb and Flow, and it's the life and times of this little boy named Lewis on Shackleford Banks. And so it is amazing. She talks about, she couldn't go into the climate, you know, and how the shorelines have changed and shifted, and but we give the students or the teachers one of her books when they go away, so they can read that book again back in the classroom.
What has been the response?
Oh, it's been tremendous. Can you tell? I get excited when I start talking about it.
Walter, did you anticipate this kind of response? You know, earlier we talked.
Absolutely.
Earlier we talked. Well, wrong. Earlier we talked. I'm kidding, Walter. Earlier we talked about the role of grassroots and government. Here's a situation where grassroots and government being the school system, made a connection. And it was a valuable connection. Even I got impressed with that, Gracie. And there was an article in the Carteret County News-Times on this very topic 2 weeks ago, I guess it was now. But the point of the matter is, here's this interesting interplay about how a grassroots organization, the History Place, I'd like to keep calling it, the History Museum, has made with the county and is enhancing the educational component.
Right. We also have some other E3 events coming up. The next one being May 30th with regards to, picture these E3 events and sessions being the history of something.
Right.
And this one's going to be the history of law enforcement.
Okay. And by the way, E3, for those who are hearing that for the first time, is because we talked about it earlier in the program, is engage, entertain, and educate.
Preferably in that order, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, in order to engage, you've got to engage people in order to even communicate with them. So yeah, I think that applies. All right, law enforcement coming up.
Right.
Great story. All right, we'll be wrapping it up here. I want to thank Walter Steele again, the president of the Board of Trustees of the Carteret County Historical Society.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I remembered that without writing it down. And we have Gracie Bender, which is easy. She's the director of the History Museum, there at 1008 Arundel Street, Morehead City, open to the public. What hours are they open?
Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 4.
10 to 4. It's interesting. I've got to say, Gracie, the story about the fourth graders and what you were doing there would also apply to the tens and make that hundreds of thousands of visitors that come through our
Absolutely.
area. So is there ability to keep that display up, or is there a way to sort of codify it in some fashion, maybe
Sure.
through
Fish painting.
audio, video, or something?
Well, we're going to be, we haven't thought of audio video, but that's a good idea. But we have talked about chronicling it, putting it in a booklet so that you could come and
Okay.
through a docent tour, you could learn that.
Possibly doing this again in the future?
Oh, absolutely. We've been asked to do it every year.
Wonderful.
So
I want to congratulate you on this effort, and I'm going to wrap it up with you, Walter. There was a question I asked earlier, but here's an opportunity that I think many communities fail to, and I shouldn't criticize them without having done any kind of a survey, but communities ought to think about how they can engage their local citizenry to educate them. And I say that what you've done here with the History Museum is, have you heard or seen anything of this nature in your conversations with other organizations of similar nature?
It's kind of an offshoot, but there's a maker movement around the country, particularly San Francisco, and they demonstrated to me the importance of engaging, entertaining, and educating.
Right.
However, I think it's still in its infancy as far as
I think
predominant.
this is an interesting concept. I'll talk to you about this a little later on. But I want to thank, again, Gracie Bender. Mm-hmm. Gracie, pleasure to meet you, by the way, first time.
nice to meet you too.
And Walter Steele, again, all of this related to the Carteret County History Museum, located at 1008 Arundel Street, Morehead City, and it's open to the public. And by the way, how much does it cost to go in?
Go ahead.
It's $5 per person and $3 under 17, I believe.
Okay, I think. And by the way, do you sell memberships?
Yes, we have memberships. We have plenty of memberships, but we want more.
All right.
So please come and join us.